AMD announces Ryzen Z1 Zen4 APUs for handheld gaming consoles with up to 12 RDNA 3 GPU cores. ASUS ROG Ally on-sold prototypes have been pictured, featuring a closer look at AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme chip. This is Tech Track. So firstly, we have AMD introduces the Z1 series of processors, and basically these are going in the handheld gaming consoles. And we already know what kind of console we're talking about is the ROG Ally. But first, we have to look into what kind of performance we can expect from Z1. So if you look into the specs here, it's 8-core 16-thread Zen 4 processor, 12 RDNA 3 GPU cores. Basically, that's huge, like 12 of them. And 24 megabytes of total cache and 8.6 teraflops of graphics performance. That's pretty cool. That's the Extreme, Z1 Extreme. And the Z1, only if you're looking at, it's 6-core 12 threads, which is more of a budget-friendly one. 4 RDNA 3 cores, which is very low in terms of GPU cores, because, you know, Extreme is getting 12 and only Z1 is getting only 4, so it's kind of low. But total cache is 22 megabytes, not that bad. And again, the graphics performance will go down to 2.8 teraflops, but that's what I'm saying, that this is going to be for more of a entry-level handheld gameplay, and Z1 Extreme is going to be more of a, you know, crazy gameplay for, you know what I mean. And if you look into the graphics performance comparison here, Nintendo Switch is 0.4, and AMD Ryzen Z1 is, well, 2.8 we're talking about, and AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme is getting 8.6, so yeah, like, it kind of tells you that Nintendo Switch doesn't stand a chance. We have some gaming benchmarks here, basically comparing the Z1 and Z1 Extreme. So if you look into it, Red Dead Redemption 2, we are getting 47.9 with that is the Z1 Extreme, and 25.3 only Z1. Borderlands 3 is getting 57.7 in Z1 Extreme and 40.5 in Z1. Same goes for CSGO, is getting 162. If you look closely enough, Z1 is not performing bad. Like, it's good enough. Like, I feel like Z1 Extreme is underperforming, because if you look into it, the teraflop for performance was 8 versus 2.8, but in real-world gaming benchmarks, in low settings, of course, we're looking at 162 and 137. They're quite close, you know what I mean? Like, in Grand Theft Auto, we're looking at 89 and 84, so not a huge gap here. So I believe Z1 is underperforming a little bit. Companies of Heroes, we're looking at well, double the performance for the Z1 Extreme, 60 compared to Z1, which is getting 33. Forza Horizon 4 is getting 121 versus 83, so again, not a huge lead, but still there's quite a substantial lead, so not bad. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is getting 73 on Z1 Extreme, and Z1 getting only 39, so it kind of tells you that, yeah, it will struggle when it comes to higher end games, you know. Far Cry 6 getting 51 versus 34. You know, again, there's a lead here, but then again, it kind of makes sense. Middle-earth Shadow of War, the lead, the gap closes down a little bit. 64 and 51, so yeah. And in Dota 2, there's literally no gap. 102 and 100, there's literally no gap at all. So yeah, basically Dota 2 has little to no performance benefit if you use Z1 or Z1 Extreme. But again, Z1 Extreme is the way to go, because it will run most of the games 60 plus. Some games it loses, but, you know, I guess you can use FSR if available to, you know, compensate. So that's pretty good. And as I said about the RSR or FSR, what you want to use, they're using RSR here, which is upscaled to 720p. And, well, to be honest with you, you don't need more than 720p anyway, because it's a handheld, the display is smaller. So I guess 720p upscaling is good enough. And they're using the Z1 Extreme here for the benchmarks, and almost all the titles are getting above 60 FPS. Companies of Heroes getting only 60, but again, all of them are getting above 60 FPS. So it's pretty good, right? If you look into the Z1 though, however, they're not reaching the 60 FPS mark here. Well, most of the titles are looking at they're above 60 or on par 60, but Companies of Heroes and Red Dead Redemption 2 both are going below 60 FPS. But to be honest with you, it's still not like unplayable or anything. They're playable. 41 FPS Red Dead Redemption 2, slow-paced game. Yeah, it's quite playable. Companies of Heroes 3, again, not a huge demanding, you know, game. So 52 kind of makes sense, like in terms of movement, of course. If you're looking for movement, obviously, like, you need more FPS, right? Movement games are much more enjoyable with higher frames. But, you know, if you're playing like certain games like these, like, I don't think you really need more than 50, 60, you know, like I think that's playable enough. Next up we have ROG Ally. Leaked pictures are here basically, and if you look closely enough, yeah, these are all the models we're looking at for the ROG Ally. Interesting enough, there are plenty of them, I believe. I don't know which one will be, you know, the actual sample, like which one of these, so we'll see about that. But yeah, I feel like these are the higher end ones because they look higher end, you know. So that's the model that's running. I don't know which model that is, but it's running, and well, it looks nice. ROG Ally, pretty good, not gonna lie. And already it's using Z1 Extreme chip, so it's gonna perform really well, that's for sure. That's a back plate, so there's enough cooling going on even with the logo, so that's pretty good. There's a sideways, not that thick, good for a handheld, I believe. And if you look at the IO port here, we have a Type-C port here and probably a charging port right over here. I mean, you can charge with the Type-C anyway. That's the power button. That's just, well, basically 3.5 millimeter, and that's probably the memory goes inside. And I don't know what that is because I'm confused because there's another picture that I don't know what that is. I'm going to show you. Wait. It's quite a slim design, so that's not a problem at all. And that's the basic buttons, X, Y, B, A. Well, I should have said A, B, X, Y. But anyway, yep. Simple generic version. I wonder if this is a, you know, those adaptive trigger. I don't know if it's available or not. We'll see about that. That's a backpack. That's a cool backpack that you will get with this. And of course, it's running the Genshin Impact. We have some RGBs though. And we have a more clearer picture about what's inside. And that is the chip, the Z1 Extreme chip. Pretty cool looking, right? Like the PCB, the red, you know, red color. I really like that. And that's the thing I was going to talk about. What is that? Is that an Intel Nuke or is it... No, I don't think it's gonna be Intel Nuke, but what is that? Is it an external GPU? I am confused. Like, what is that exactly? I don't know for sure, but they're using something. It could be an external GPU because if you look into it, right here, this is the spot. This is the IO that goes in like that particular external device. I don't know what interface that is. I have no clue. If you know, just comment down below. I would like to know what that is because this thing is huge. Like, I believe this is an external GPU that you can use, but it also doesn't make any sense. Why would you use an external GPU for a handheld console? Kind of doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, it seems like ASUS ROG Ally is looking pretty good in my opinion because, you know, performance seems good enough. I hope the pricing will be the only deal to, you know, consider ROG Ally because we have no clue what the pricing is right now. And now we also have a comparison here from the video cards here, basically handheld gaming console for the ASUS ROG Ally and Steam Deck, and we do have some good comparison here. And I feel like Steam Deck will lose here because, you know, ASUS ROG is just way better. Like, let's look into it. It's basically using the architecture of Zen 4, RDNA 3, and that one, the Steam Deck, is using Zen 2 and RDNA 2. So it just tells you right there that obviously ASUS ROG Ally should perform better, hands down. The APU here, they're using the Z1 Extreme or Z1. We already discussed it's going to be 8 core or 6 core depending on what kind of form factor that you're choosing. And of course, Steam Deck using AMD Vanguard 4-core 8 threads and 3.5 GHz. So obviously, it's just very much clear that the APU is stronger for the ASUS ROG Ally. As a CGPU, they're using RDNA 3, so obviously it's going to perform way better compared to the RDNA 2, even though they do have 8 CUs for the Steam Deck, so it should perform maybe a little bit better or maybe on par compared to the RDNA 3 4 CU version from the ASUS ROG Ally, so we'll see about that. The external GPU, we have ROG XG Mobile, so we do have external GPU. That's interesting. They're using up to RTX 4090. That is absurd, literally absurd. They're literally using up to RTX 4090 for a handheld console as an external GPU. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Steam Deck doesn't support that, so obviously ASUS ROG has a lead here. Memory, they're using the similar 16 gigs of DDR5 memory here, but they do not mention the speed here. Well, Steam Deck is using 5500 megahertz, so we have to look into what ASUS ROG is using when it releases, of course. The storage, it's coming with 512 gigs compared to Steam Deck. We do have options for Steam Deck, but I guess we don't really need, you know, lower tier 64 gigs or 256 gigs. Always go for the higher end, right? Display is gonna be a 1920 to 1080p display and 120 Hz. Again, Asus ROG is nailing it because they don't have that. Steam Deck only have 80p and 60 hertz. So yeah, I don't think Steam Deck is gonna win here. Connectivity we still need to know, but I believe they will support Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 5, maybe. Who knows? We'll see about that. And the same goes for Bluetooth 5. They should be supporting that. Battery is another thing that we need to consider because Steam Deck is going for 40 watt hours. We have no idea what Asus is going for, so we'll see about that. But what surprises me the most is the weight. Even though they have better, equipment, the weight class is lighter compared to Steam Deck. So that's another win. It's a better handheld right there. Even with the dimension is smaller, as you can see, 28, 11.3, and 3.9. Look at this. 29.8, 11.7, and 4.9. So obviously it's slimmer and smaller. Well, if you look into the Steam Deck pricing here, it's $399, $529, and $649. If you look into the last one, the $649, and compare it with Asus ROG, we do not have the pricing, but I believe it's gonna be has to be competitive. But I believe they're gonna be charging around, I'm guessing, $749, $849, because better hardware, everything is better. Like it just does make sense that to have a much higher pricing. So we'll see about that. Release time will be Q2 2023. Just we have to wait and see what kind of performance we can get from Asus ROG Ally. It's looking pretty good.